Hello everyone, this is part 15 of What If Naruto Passed the Genin test, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Good Naruto, very nicely done, bellowed Kyuubi in Naruto's mind. Performing to the demon's standards was rare, but actually receiving a compliment on his efforts was unprecedented, so naturally Naruto's confidence soared as he twirled and masterfully executed the finishing blow, dispatching his imagined enemy with a flick of his wrist. The blonde Genin landed gracefully on the black ground as the pieces of the enemy nin Kyuubi conjured fell unceremoniously on either side of him. The blonde stood up and rolled his surveyed the terrain. 8 boss total, or pieces thereof, were strewn about the miniature battlefield, which consisted mainly of a mock Konoha with some forest thrown in around the edges. The 2 blades shimmered in the bloody light, completely devoid of stain, as they'd not remained in their victims long enough for the blood to stick. One of Kyuubi's massive tails twitched in the dark, and the scenery, as well as the S-boss that littered it, shimmered and vanished, leaving Naruto in a blank field of dark. The boy walked to the massive cage and sat down with his back to one of the massive bars, and took a satisfied breath. "So how'd I do?" he asked, already knowing what the fox would say but wanting to hear it anyway. "Surprisingly well," said Kyuubi. "Many of the kendo masters of old would have been satisfied with your performance if you were one of the neophyte learners. But don't let it go to your head, compared to the masters you're still only a child playing with sticks." "I tried," said Naruto, recognizing that being compared with even the worst of the old warriors by Kyuubi was a high compliment. "You were around when the old masters were still alive, right? I was new to this world, but yes, I was there. What business do you have with it?" "I was just thinking," said Naruto, picking up just a little of the seemed defensiveness in Kyuubi's voice. "You've mentioned them a bit and each time you made them out to be like superhuman. Who were they?" Kyuubi hesitated. "You're asking for a few thousand years of history in which every detail is of great importance, but suffice it to say that the old masters I mentioned were the ancestors of everyone who is today. Even the greatest of your ninjas pales in comparison to their apprentices." "Were they ninjas?" asked the boy, wonder in his voice. "No," Kyuubi said with his condescending chuckle, "they were more like samurai, but if you mean to ask if they could use chakra, then yes. As I said, they were gods by today's standards." "Wow, so what were they like? I mean, were they nice and good people or were they really evil?" Kyuubi grumbled a little to himself. "So many questions that would take years to answer, but I suppose there's no real harm in curiosity either. Though we lack the time to properly discuss the ancient history of this world, perhaps when we return to Konoha I'll tell you a bit about them." Naruto frowned and crossed his arms. "But if they were so great, I want to know about them. Could you at least teach me some of what they knew? Like jutsus and stuff." "You lack the strength, Kit," said Kyuubi with no small measure of mockery in his voice. "Not only do you have far too little chakra to perform any of their most basic techniques correctly, but your body would never be able to bear the strain." "What's that supposed to mean?" said Naruto angrily. "Of course I could take it." "Kit," said Kyuubi, a deathly cold edge in his rumbling voice, "I'm tired of your impertinence and impatience on this subject. The day may eventually come when I'll teach you some of what they knew. But this body is my vessel, if it is and I will not let you destroy it trying to master a jutsu beyond your abilities. You may eventually be strong enough, but not yet. But how can you expect me to get strong enough to learn their skills if you don't teach me more than cool little moves with these swords?" Naruto shouted angrily, pointing one of the blades in his hands accusingly at the demon. "When do I get to learn something more useful to a ninja?" Kyuubi snapped his jaws with a near-splitting snap. "I'm growing tired of this, Kit. You can either accept the training coming from an all-powerful demon who wants to keep you alive, or you can go off and flounder in your own inadequacy." Naruto nearly leapt through the bars but bit his lip for a moment. "Your training is making me inadequate," he yelled. "Teach me the old ninja arts, not sword tricks." Kyuubi was silent for a moment, but the red mist covering the ground began to glow faintly until a deep rumble echoed throughout the chamber. Kyuubi's massive tails twitched in the air. "Fine," Kyuubi growled loudly, if you want to learn new jutsus you must first prove that your body can handle the drain. Immediately the air around Naruto began to glow blue. The genin gasped as his limbs suddenly fell like lead weights at his side. Vaporous chakra began to pour out of him in every direction. His pupils dilated and contracted wildly as his breathing became erratic and painful. The energy escapes you, Kit. Gather it into a moldable form or you'll die of exhaustion. Naruto tried to raise his arms for a seal, any seal, to mold the chakra, but they were just too heavy, he was too tired. His muscles were burning, his lungs felt like they were going to explode. This is the energy required for a simple jutsu, Kit. I thought you said you could take it. Where is that confidence now? Try and call on the energy to seek out an enemy and burst his heart. Perform a simple combination of seals, go ahead, and try. Naruto heaved a breath and shouted in pain, bringing his hands up in front of him into the ram seal. His chakra fluctuated for only a second, but his arms fell back down before he could do anything. The blue light disappeared and the boy fell backwards. A pillow of red chakra leapt up from the ground and caught him in the air, then lowered him slowly to the ground on his back. Naruto was gasping for breath. Blood was running out from the tips of his fingernails and the corner of his mouth as he lay there. He tried to speak, but could barely muster the energy. You sucked the chakra right out of me, bastard fox. Trying to kill me. Kyuubi hesitated, not for any reason though except to let Naruto lay there and realize just how wrong he'd been. Kit, now do you understand? You just aren't strong enough yet. Not only do you lack the chakra for the attacks, but the jutsu you want to learn drain you of your very life force too. Naruto felt a little energy seep back into his body, and reached up to wipe the blood off of his cheek. Why am I bleeding? In here, Kit, this is my domain. Whatever I command happens and I wanted you to feel the full extent of the damage you'd receive from attempting one of those jutsus. I see, said Naruto exhausted. In here, I can just close my eyes and instantly recover energy that would take days to get back in the real world. Why am I still so tired? Because out there, if you had tried that technique, you'd be right, said Naruto, feeling humbled. Maybe I should wait a little while. Kyuubi sat silent, not even uttering an I told you so kind of remark. His massive tail twitched before he spoke. Sleep, Kit, you have to be up in a few hours, and I think tonight's lesson has been learned. Naruto just nodded as he suddenly felt the sensation of a warm bed all around. Early that morning Team 7 rose and got ready for their journey home, packing a few bags of the necessary commodities such as compact seed cakes, hard tack, all of the unpleasant but filling foods that a traveler takes with them. From all three of the genin there was no shortage of sing about the lack of real food, until Kakashi told them that the wave was still too poor to produce soldier pills, and that he had sold his to pay off an orphanage's taxes. While none of the children was entirely convinced that Kakashi was indeed capable of such charity, they didn't want to fight about it. So the four of them set off into the city in the pre-dawn hours towards home. It's kinda a funny feeling, said Naruto to the group, starting back towards Konoha. How do you mean? Asked Kakashi, turning to look over his shoulder as he was leading the group. Naruto hesitated for only a second. It's just that, being away from home and going through all of this just makes the world seem like such a big place. Home seems so much smaller, whereas before it was all I knew so it was huge. Kakashi just smiled through his mask. That's why it's so important to defend your home, he said, because it is that one little place in the world where you belong. There's an old cliche that home is where the heart is, and truer words were never spoken. Bringing up the rear of the group, Sasuke grimaced. But how do you protect it? Wondered the raven-haired boy. The four of them approached the edge of the bridge and began to ascend the ramp where not too long ago, Tazuna had honored them all as heroes. In each of them it evoked a sense of wonder as they rose to the level of the now clear platform and could see clear to the edge and into the wilderness beyond. You three are the reason for all of this, said Kakashi, stopping and looking at them. I never would have guessed that 3 genin, not even a year out of the academy, could persevere through so much, much less come out and provide the people of a desolate community with such a treasure. The Junin closed his eye and smiled. You've all done so well and I'm proud to be able to say you're my team. And you should each be proud to say that you were teammates. Ino couldn't hold back but ran forward and hugged Kakashi around the waist while Naruto beamed from ear to ear and put his hand behind his head. Sasuke stood back with a grin on his face and gave Kakashi a slight but respectful bow. We couldn't have done it without you, Kakashi-sensei, said Naruto. You're a great leader, and we couldn't have asked for a better one. Ino and Sasuke nodded in agreement. I couldn't ask for a better team, responded Kakashi, turning and steering them towards the west. SC. Hokage-sama, gasped the Chunin as he burst into the dim but comfortable office. Sarutobi turned in his high-backed chair to face the new arrival. He puffed lazily on his pipe and glanced up from the report on the wave mission that had arrived from Kakashi via carrier pigeon the day before. Ah, said the Hokage in relatively high spirits, glad you're here because I need letters sent out to Suna and the rest of the alliance that both Momoki Zabuza and the arms dealer Goto have been slain by Kakashi and Team 7. The Chunin hesitated, slightly stunned. Wonderful news, said the unimportant to the plot Chunin. I'll see to it right away, though you told me to alert you as soon as the Haruno girl was awake. The old man raised an eyebrow and set down his pipe. Yes, how is she? She's conscious, but exceedingly weak, and I think she'd like to see you. Sarutobi's eyebrow rose just a little higher. Only if you can make time, of course, the Chunin added hastily, not wanting to be disrespectful. Oh, I think I can always make time for someone in need, said the Hokage in a grandfatherly type of tone. Please follow me, sir. The sunlight shone into the hospital room as Sarutobi opened the plain white door and stepped in. He took off his hat and held it in front of him, effectively stepping out of his rank for Sakura's sake as she lay almost helplessly on the bed in front of him. I was told you asked to see me, said the old man without a hint of unkindness in his voice. The pink-haired girl nodded, and slowly reached up to the scar running from one side of her alabaster tee to the other. Sarutobi flinched as she felt the darker skin that the surgeons said could never be fully healed. He wished to heaven that there was someone in Konoha who could remove the blemish. I'm sorry, dear, he said, but we can get you something to cover it up if you wish. Sakura, her eyes still closed, shook her head from side to side, dismissing the statement altogether. Naruto, she whispered, her voice breaking as she uttered the name. Is he all right? Sarutobi scowled across the mahogany desk in front of him, not looking beyond Kakashi, but not making eye contact with him either. The Hokage was merely glaring angrily, leaving Kakashi to wonder what horrible thoughts were going through the old man's mind. Why? Sighed the old man finally, placing his hand on his brow and closing his eyes. Kakashi was silent for a moment. He knew exactly what Sarutobi was asking, but he was afraid to say what was on his mind. I knew they could handle it, stated the Junin flatly. The Hokage sighed again, seemingly unconvinced. Kakashi, he began, I won't mince words with you. You overstepped your bounds with this, and if you were anyone else I'd likely have. He stopped himself, trying to check his irritation, and took a deep breath. You've done a great service to a lot of people, that's not in question, said the Hokage in a quieter, but no less forceful tone, but you knew as soon as those Mist-nin attacked you on the road that this mission was far more dangerous than we'd first guessed. I did, sir, said the copy-nin. Then why didn't you pull your squad back and leave the matters to more experienced ninja? Kakashi stayed silent for a moment, then uncrossed his arms and shrugged. I considered it for a while. I even went so far as to threaten Tazuna-san, but after I thought further on the matter I decided it was well within my squad's capability to complete the mission. Sarutobi sat back in his chair. What evidence did you have of your team's abilities? They're fresh from the academy, untried and inexperienced. You had no way of knowing how they'd fare outside of controlled tests and exams. Hokage-sama, said the copy-nin in a far more serious tone than before, I think we both see just how quickly Naruto and Sasuke are progressing, and Ino isn't lagging too far behind herself. She did after all go toe-to-toe with Zabuza and critically wound him. If not for his sheer brute strength. Sarutobi held up his hand and looked across at Kakashi. Yes, I can see that Sasuke is growing at an incredible, albeit alarming rate. That Mangekyo of his does nothing if not prove to me that his potential is limitless. And Naruto, it's obvious those Maibu swords of his are influencing his development. He's even starting to fight like one of those old ninja. I had noticed that, muttered Kakashi, reflecting on Naruto's sudden mastery of Kinjutsu. The memory of those swords is beginning to act on his style. As is the Kyuubi, said the Hokage. You said in your report that Naruto possessed an uncanny ability to call on the demon's strength, meaning he not only knows of the fox, but is gaining control of its powers, and possibly even communing with it. I don't think that's an issue, Hokage-sama. After all, Kyuubi has a vested interest in keeping Naruto alive. Sarutobi shrugged. My thought exactly, sir. I'm not worried about Naruto interacting with the demon, primarily because I'm not sure if he really even can, and secondly because if he does, then the Kyuubi will do him no harm. But that's not the point. Yes, your team is strong, but they're inexperienced. I'm not criticizing your achievements, but all that potential is meaningless if they or you end up s. Alright, said Kakashi in an apologetic tone, I may have taken a gamble with steep risks, but at least we came out on top. Besides, now they do have a considerable amount of experience under their belt. You always did have a way of getting under my skin with your arguments, said the Hokage, closing his eyes and putting 2 fingers on the bridge of his nose, and not in a good way. Listen, all I'm going to say is that in the future, you have to be more careful. They're Genin. And the Chunin exams are in a month, said Kakashi. So soon they'll be Chunin. Sarutobi, still with his eyes closed, couldn't stop a smile from spreading across his face. You have that kind of confidence in 'em already. My confidence in my team, sir, said the copy nin resolutely, is absolute. The Hokage chuckled only slightly and folded his hands on his desk. I can remember when the 4th said that about you. Where are the children now? I assume you gave them their pay. Kakashi inwardly sighed, glad to have changed the subject. Yes sir, plus hazard pay. Sasuke I'm not sure about. He said he was going to go get something to eat before going to one of the training fields, while Naruto and Ino both went home. SC. How do you think your mom is going to react when you tell her how you fought on the bridge? Asked Naruto, as he and Ino walked side by side, and hand in hand towards the Yamanaka abode. Ino cringed, then shook off the chill that had shot down her spine. I know exactly what she'll do. As soon as we turn the corner up here, we'll see her waiting at the front door. She'll yell how happy she is to see me, then rush forward and crush my back in a hug. Naruto stifled a chuckle, then asked how she knew that, as Ino playfully nudged his arm. It's exactly what she did my first day walking home from the academy, giggled Ino, and my second day of coming home from the academy. Really? Asked the boy, I never would have pegged your mom for the overly worried sort. She does after all let you do the whole ninja thing. Oh, she's not overly worried, just overly doting. Don't girls like that in their parents? Asked Naruto. Ino smiled, I love my mother, I just wish she wouldn't be quite so. She searched for a word. Smothering, suggested Kyuubi. Smothering, echoed Naruto. Exactly, said Ino, thanks, but yeah. It's like because my brother SD, and especially now that father has passed on, I'm all my mother has, and while she doesn't want to cling to me, she can't really help being incredibly overly affectionate at times. Naruto's heart sank. I never knew you had a brother, he said in a slightly quieter voice. Would you mind if I asked what he was like? Ino shrugged. I never knew him. He SD 12 years ago when the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. Naruto nearly tripped over the perfectly smooth sidewalk. How about you don't tell her about me for a long, long time? Naruto silently agreed and offered his condolences. Don't worry about it, said Ino, as horrible as it may sound, it doesn't really bother me because like I said, I never knew him. I wouldn't mention him to my mother though. I've never heard her talk about him, but I don't know how she'd react. Okay, said Naruto, I won't, but it might be something good for the two of you to talk about sometime. Careful Kit, this could be a very delicate matter. I plan to eventually, said Ino as they rounded the corner onto the road leading to her house. Ino, shouted a feminine voice from down the way. Naruto. I'm so glad the two of are home safe. Ino glanced over at him with an I told you so kind of look and a smile, as the older of the two Yamanaka women came jogging down the path towards them. Naruto looked off towards the house behind her and couldn't help but grin. She's still welcoming me home. I have a home. Just then Ino playfully braced as if she expected to be hit by a rampaging bull, and put her arms up in front of her face in mock defense. She glanced over at Naruto again, not sure what to make of the slightly bewildered look on his face as her mother plowed into the young kunoichi and scooped her up into a hug. I'm so glad to have the two of you home, and I can't wait to hear all about the mission, said Mrs. Yamanaka as she set Ino down and turned to face them, but we shouldn't just be standing out here doing nothing, we can talk over a cup of tea. Naruto grinned. The sudden hospitality was a welcome relief after what he and Team 7 had been through recently. That sounds great, he blurted. Wait till you hear how Ino stood up to a guy who Kakashi-sensei was scared of. Ino blushed and crossed her arms in front of her chest, but didn't say anything, as her mother smiled warmly at Naruto and said that sounds scary. It was incredible, shouted Naruto. She charged straight for him and espered him in the side. Naruto began to digress into the whole story of the battle on the bridge, talking with his hands as much as his mouth. He was flailing them around wildly in mock combat, as his own swords clanked in the joint sheath on his back. Mrs. Yamanaka leaned down and whispered mischievously in Ino's ear, "So much for a cup of hot tea." Ino nodded, and together she and her mother grabbed Naruto by the arm, and promptly, but not unkindly led him into the house. Naruto, however, barely noticed that he was being moved, and continued to dictate the happenings of the fight. And then Sasuke and I totally were going crazy on that Haku character, while Kakashi-sensei was just sitting back trying to keep up with us. It was great. Mrs. Yamanaka grinned and glanced across the small kitchen table, and looked between her daughter and Naruto, who were sitting a little closer together than they had been the last time the three of them were at this table. It was a fact she did not fail note. She especially took notice of the look in Ino's eyes as she watched the other Genin expound on the battle. The girl looked almost starry-eyed, like she was listening to the story of some star, or teen idol or something, and while Mrs. Yamanaka was far too level-headed to be made uncomfortable by her daughter's behavior, she was not so naive to file it away into the back of her mind. Naruto, said the older Yamanaka in an especially motherly voice. Oh, yes ma'am, said the Genin. She glanced between Naruto and Ino a few more times before starting again. How about I buy you ramen tonight at Ichiraku? Anything you'd like and as much of it as you can eat. Naruto grinned, a little evilly, and forgot completely about telling her about the mission. Nay, I really appreciate the offer, but we just got paid for a B-class mission, and even a little extra for the trouble. Plus, I really can't tell you how nice it is that you're letting me stay here. If anyone should be buying anyone dinner, I should be the one paying. Mrs. Yamanaka smiled again, a little taken back by the maturity and generosity of the offer, but waving her hand to the compliment. It's nothing, I assure you, she said. You're always as welcome here as anyone in the family and I love having you, but what I'm trying to say is that Ino and I need to have a little girl talk. Oh, said Naruto, a little surprised but not insulted by any means. Sure, I can step out for a bit, maybe go pick on Sasuke-chan a little bit. He winked at Ino as he said it and she winked back. What's up, mother? Asked the kunoichi. Oh, you'll see, said Mrs. Yamanaka with an unreadable grin on her face, unreadable in the sense that you could tell she was grinning, but there was no indication as to why. I'll see you two in a bit then, I guess, said Naruto cheerily as he got up and began to walk from the kitchen. Come back in just a few hours, shouted Mrs. Yamanaka and Ino in unison. Okay, I'll bring back ramen or something, said the blonde as he shut the front door behind him and set off down the path. Now what can I do for a few hours? You could train, said QB. Nah, I just got back from a mission. Maybe I'll go to the plaza and look around there for a while. Or you could train, said the fox a little more sternly. Why? I just want to relax a little bit. Don't you demons ever take a day off? No, said the fox flatly. Now how about you head out to that training field west of the hospital and practice some jutsus or something. That's it. I'll go to the hospital and visit Sakura-chan. Kakashi said she was doing better, and I've been missing her for a while now. What better to do than drop in on a friend, right? Naruto could feel the demon's sigh in the back of his mind. Fine, but tonight and tomorrow we hit it hard to make up for lost time. Naruto started down the road that led to the hospital and looked up at one of the clocks hanging above a store. It was just now 2 p.m. and which meant he'd have plenty of time to talk to Sakura and grab a bite for dinner. Who knew, maybe Sakura would join him. As he strode beside the street, he couldn't help but fondly picture the pink-haired girl in his mind. Despite sometimes being the worst of people to him, Sakura really had always been there and her presence alone was somehow comforting, he thought. Why are you so set on me spoiling my day off anyway? Wondered the Genin. I just want this body in prime condition in case you should suddenly have to fight for our life. After all, if US Sadai and I don't like the idea of oblivion. Selfish thing, aren't you? Demon, said the fox in a what did you expect kind of tone. Fine, I'll hit it hard in training tonight. But only if you agree to teach me some cool jutsu. Agreed, but I decide the jutsu and you have to be alright with my decision. Deal. After a droll conversation with the fox about how exactly to navigate the streets of Konoha, Kyubi was convinced they were going the wrong. Naruto had reached the large double doors of the hospital and was pulling them open to allow an hunched old woman to enter. Thank you, young man, said the woman, a smile creasing her ancient face. Naruto just smiled in response and stepped in behind her and walked up to the desk. Name and do you have an appointment? Asked the very bored female receptionist without even looking up at him. Naruto stammered, Uzumaki and I'm here wondering if you could point me to Haruno Sakura's room. Hey Kes, shouted the receptionist in an annoyingly nasal voice after looking around the desk for a moment, do we know where the roster is? It's not there on the desk. Shouted back an equally annoying voice from somewhere in the stacks of files behind the receptionist. No. Naruto was becoming irritated, and couldn't help but scratch at the counter with nails that were slightly longer than they had been a minute before. Well, check again, shouted the Kes character. Naruto slammed his fist impatiently on the counter, and a whole mass of books and folders fell from the desk into the receptionist's lap and the floor around her chair. Might that be it? Asked Naruto, pointing to a hardback book in the receptionist's that plainly read, Room Roster. Oh, said the startled woman, so it is, and she immediately flipped it open and began scrolling through the names and rooms and authorization. What was that? Asked Naruto in his mind after the sudden feeling of impatience had passed. I was growing tired of her incompetence, said the demon, perhaps I went too far. I'd say so, try to keep the whole dark side thing in check please. Naruto sensed Kyubi's agreement just as the receptionist collected herself and looked up from the book. It looks like Haruno Sakura is gone, sir, she said, checked herself out this morning and left with the Hokage. Really? Asked Naruto, do you know where she is now? Not personally, she said, but you might try with the Hokage. I'm sure he'd know, sir. But he could be anywhere. The unease around the unusually strong boy was obvious in her voice, though she checked it well for someone without training. Have a good day, sir, she said, obviously wanting to be rid of Naruto. I'll let the Hokage know you were here if he comes back and, eek. The woman jumped up and stomped down with her high-heeled shoe, trying to K the rat that had seemingly appeared out of nowhere around her ankles. There were a series of loud clacks as she tried vainly to K the rodent, but it dodged out and away from her SS, and escaped behind Naruto's sandal where it peeked out at its aggressor. I'll take care of this little guy for you, said Naruto as he reached down and carefully picked up the rat which, surprisingly, didn't resist. I'll put it outside away from the hospital. The receptionist seemed satisfied and moved to straighten herself up and regain a presentable image, as Naruto, rat in hand, left out the large front doors. He walked about a quarter-mile down the road and kneeled down by a bush. Finding the Hokage could be very difficult in this town, given the hour he's likely out and about, not in his office, and tracking him down could be time-consuming. Yeah, muttered Naruto, looking at the rodent who seemed to be looking back up at him. He felt a strong desire from Kyubi to devour the animal, but decided to just let it go. I don't suppose you know where Old Man Hokage is? He asked as he set the rat down and it scampered away into the brush by the road. You're hungry, let's just go get something to eat. Naruto nodded and looked around to get his bearings before setting off for the nearest ramen stand. On the way he contemplated just looking around for the old man but decided Kyubi was right and that it would be too hard to track him down in the time he had. Hey, he heard a slightly raspy voice shout from a ways behind him. Naruto turned to see none other than Sarutobi walking up the path towards him, smiling and welcoming him back. I heard you were looking for me, said the old man as he reached the Genin. Yeah, Naruto stammered, surprised by just how lucky he'd gotten. How'd you know? Sarutobi looked down at the ground at Naruto's feet, and Naruto glanced around just in time to see a little brown rodent scamper away into the grass. The old man grinned and waited for Naruto to say something. You're kidding, said the Genin, rats. Well, said Sarutobi, a long time ago, long time ago in my youth, I got tired of always putting up with rats. I saw them as useless little pests, but then I saw how quickly they scurried about. It hit me that with a little bit of training, they could make great spies and messengers. When in doubt, go to the rats. The old man chuckled a little just before asking Naruto what he could do for him. I was wondering if you'd seen Sakura-chan lately, said the Genin. Oh, actually I did. We left the hospital together a while ago and then went shopping. How's she doing? Asked Naruto, more than a little concerned. You'll have to see for yourself, said the Hokage flatly. She's in the training field west of the hospital, practicing her taijutsu when last I saw her. So she's up and around and even training? Asked Naruto, almost dumbfounded. Go see for yourself. Naruto didn't need to be told and broke into a run back the way he'd come. Don't say a word, he said as soon as he felt Kyuubi preparing to speak. What? Said the demon condescendingly. I was going to say I told you so, but I decided to hold my tongue. Right, thought the Genin. He arrived at the training field seconds later and looked around, but tall scarecrow-like dummies in black cloaks, you know, those kind that ninjas seem to get from nowhere, had been set up all around, hindering Naruto's view of the grounds. Naruto wanted to call out and see if Sakura would appear from somewhere within the forest of mannequins, but he hesitated and merely waited on the outskirts of the gathering. Something told him to just wait, though he didn't know why, and for inexplicable reasons, the atmosphere was thick with some kind of anxiety. Do you think Sakura is really here? Perhaps not. I don't smell her, but it's possible that her scent changed from being in the hospital or any number of things. I don't like, Naruto began, but was cut off as his hand instinctively leapt to the handle of one of his wakizashi. Completely on reflex, he jerked the sword out and raised it in a flash as a glint of light exploded out one of the dummy's back, shredding the cloak on its way. There was a loud clang and a tremor ran up Naruto's arm as the kunai bashed against, and ricocheted off the short sword, then thudded into the dirt. Naruto instantly sank to an aggressive stance and charged at the dummy, drawing the other blade and leaping into the air. The Genin corkscrewed and sailed at the mannequin, landing on it and hacking it to shreds in milliseconds, as it bent backwards to the ground. Naruto rolled to another hostile posture, landing right at a pair of feet in nice, blue sandals, connected to smooth legs that ran up into black spandex shorts covered by a dress. He looked up and straight into Sakura's face. Naruto, she yelped, both surprised and humored, what are you doing here? He stammered, looking dumbly up at her. I heard you were here and I figured I'd come say hi, but then one of those things all around just threw a kunai at me. Sakura stepped back and looked around. Sorry, she said, that was me. I was practicing and I've gotten good enough to throw a kunai or shuriken through a target and hit the one behind it. Oh, it's okay, said Naruto, standing up and dusting himself off. That's impressive, but shouldn't you be resting or something? Sakura grinned and pulled out another shuriken. She twirled it like a ring around her finger, almost lazily, and seemed to be entranced by the motion. I've been out of commission long enough, she said as much to herself as to Naruto. I'm tired of being useless, so I've decided that no matter what, I'm going to get as strong as you and Sasuke. That way when we go on missions, I won't be the one staying back for fear of getting hurt. Naruto paused, not sure whether or not, or even how to tell her that Team 7 had been reorganized and that Shikamaru was in Anbu, while Chuji was a member of the town guard. It was an issue that was bound to come up soon, and if he didn't tell, then surely she'd get mad that he had the chance but didn't take it. It was probably just as well that he hesitated because Sakura wasn't done just yet. But I guess I've got farther to go than I thought, she said, seeing as how you just took that mannequin apart like a rag doll, when they're supposed to be made to simulate enemies with armor. Thanks I think, said Naruto, you were looking good yourself. He had only then regained the presence of mind to really realize that there had been a slight change in her wardrobe. She had traded in her usual dress for a much darker, but still recognizably red one similar to the old one, and also the spandex she normally wore had been replaced by what seemed to be a two-piece undersuit. It was flat black, like cotton, and covered her from mid-thigh, as far as Naruto could see, to her wrists and up to the base of her head, obscuring her end completely. Most notably, however, her hair was shorter. Whereas before it was halfway down her back, it now barely reached her collar. While she was no less strikingly attractive, she had a different air about her. She had a look far too mature for any 12-year-old. Sakura-chan, he said, are you all right? She looked herself over and tousled her hair just a little before she looked back at him. Sure, she said, why do you ask? he said, not sure what to say exactly. She didn't look unhealthy, quite to the contrary, she looked like the image of health. Those doctors had really done the job superbly, but she just didn't look quite like the girl he had known. You just look a little different, he managed to say. Don't get me wrong, you look good. Better than good, you look incredible. I'm just wondering why the change. She smiled for the first time since he arrived and playfully twirled around, giving him a better look at her, and put her arms up above her. So you like the new look? Naruto nodded, unable to not stare, much to Sakura's satisfaction. I'm glad, she said as she completed the 360 turn and came to face him. Hokage-sama said you might like the dress, and I cut my hair since I thought that it would make it harder for someone to get a hold of me in a fight. The underclothes are a stealthy spandex sold specifically to certain types of kunoichi. Naruto just nodded, not really paying attention but more absorbing her words. Glad you like it, she reiterated. Your look hasn't changed a bit, but that isn't a bad thing at all. Naruto looked himself over and put on that childish little grin he was so good at. Yeah, I really like orange and all, though I was thinking that I might want to change things up a little bit. Sakura looked down, then after just a second of silence glanced back up and looked Naruto straight in the eye and smiled. How about we talk about it over ramen? She asked. About what? Naruto asked, kind of surprised. Anything, said Sakura happily. What you want your new look to be, how the mission to the wave went, we should just catch you a bit. After all, you've been gone for a little while and it looks like we both might have changed a little bit, so let's just go get something to eat and talk things over. Naruto smiled and nodded, trying to be friendly. Sounds good to me. What are you in the mood for? We'll go get some ichiraku and I'll pay, said Sakura, then you can offer to walk me home. I'll say that sounds nice and we'll see where it goes from there. Sure, said Naruto, thinking in the back of his mind that he'd pick up the bill for her. Sounds good to me. Plus that'll let me pick up something for the way back anyway. Sakura's ears immediately pricked up. Where are you going after you drop me off at home? She asked, almost incredulously. Aren't you planning on eating with me? Well, yeah, of course, but I promised the Yamanakas that I'd pick up some dinner for them too. Sakura's eyebrow twitched. The corner of her mouth curled down into an almost wicked glower for less than an instant before she began to smile brightly and take a step closer to him. So you're still staying with them? She asked, to which Naruto nodded in affirmation. I must have forgotten entirely. Well, isn't that decent of them to put you up, and nice of you to stay with them? Naruto looked quizzically at her. Yeah, he said, I've stayed with them ever since my apartment blew up. How about we go now? Sakura nodded quickly. She reached out and hastily grabbed his hand. Let's go, the pink-haired girl said in a terse tone. A feisty one this vixen, Kit, said Kyubi as the two genin began to walk off towards the ramen shack. I've noticed, thought Naruto, as he pulled his hand back to his side. As he let go, Sakura looked over at him and flashed a cute smile. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.